What's up everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we've got Islam Makhachev clamoring to get back in the octagon, Henry Cejudo offering his services to Jorge Masvidal, news of the Khamzat Burns fight, and much more. Booked. Gilbert Burns versus Khamzat Chimaev at UFC 273. It looks like the visa came through in the clutch and all systems are a go, as UFC President Dana White has finally confirmed that Gilbert Burns will take on surging welterweight Khamzat Chimaev at UFC 273 this coming April. According to news outlets in Brazil, the UFC had originally wanted this fight to take place in February, but visa issues concerning Chimaev had to be sorted out first, and it will now take place in April. Gilbert Burns is currently ranked number 2 in the welterweight division, while Khamzat is number 11. Rankings aside though, this fight has a lot of momentum going into it, as Khamzat has all the hype surrounding him. He's currently 4-0 in the UFC, 10-0 in his career, and has finished all of his fights inside of 2 rounds. Burns, meanwhile, is a former title challenger who lost to Kamaru Usman back in February 2020, but he's still an incredible talent and won his last bout against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson last July by a unanimous decision. The event, which is scheduled to take place in Jacksonville, Florida in April, will also feature 2 titles on the line: the featherweight title fight between Alexander Volkanovski and Chan Sung Jung, and the bantamweight title unification fight between Aljamain Sterling and Peter Yan. What do you think about this Burns versus Khamzat fight? And who you got in this one? Jake Paul and Bellator are reportedly in preliminary talks, according to Scott Coker. With the way Jake Paul has been making waves in boxing, you'd think he'd be able to make a splash in MMA if he ever decides to move over to cage fighting. The YouTuber turned boxer has been riling up industry executives with not just how big his promotional vehicle has become, but the money it generates, given his level of talent. Paul is not a former Olympic boxer, or a Golden Glove winner, or someone with vast experience. He's gone from fighting fellow YouTubers, selling online beef, to boxing athletes not known for fighting, to knocking out 2 MMA champions back to back. With each one, he's only ratcheted up the talk about how he's ready to take over more of combat sports, and has specifically targeted MMA fighters to create the type of hype that would be a promoter's wet dream. But that's always begged the question of whether he would want to fight MMA. Jake Paul has stated yes to this question, and Bellator president Scott Coker has also stated previously that he'd be interested in signing Jake to his promotion. Now, it seems like talks are starting to take place for this to actually happen, according to Coker himself, who said this over the weekend to reporters.
If Jake Paul is serious and wants to do it, we're here. We're already talking about, when I say talking about, he was with the Showtime Boxing, and he did the fight with T-Wood. So, there's dialogue, but I think that he wants to do his 10 boxing fights and then, come over to MMA.
How about that? With Bellator and Jake Paul opening discussions about the possibility for him to fight in the cage, the clock has been set on when Jake Paul would finally do so. Of course, it could be quite a while, perhaps 2 to 3 years, before we even see Jake Paul in MMA, if we're to believe that he does want to fight 10 boxing bouts prior to his move. This would also give him time to round out his game, since we know he has the power in his hands and his boxing is only getting better. He's just now starting to throw in the kicks, judging by videos online of him doing so. He's also a former high school wrestler, but would need to polish that game up before he enters the cage. Still, what do you think about the potential for Jake Paul to fight in Bellator? Do you think we'll see him fight MMA in 3 years? Would it be sooner? Let us know in the comments.
Well, I don't believe he's in the top 10 of lightweight, but again, when we're talking about Conor McGregor, it's a different animal. This is the most popular fighter that the sport's ever put together. Is it a possibility that he gets a title shot?
Who's not in the top 10 at lightweight? Conor?
I don't think he is. I might be wrong.
He's number 9.
Number 9. Okay, so he's just on the brink of being in the top 10. But like I said, Conor is a guy that draws big business. Is it a possibility that he gets thrust right into a title shot?
I have no idea. We'll see what happens when he comes back. Who's got the title? Who does what? Who has the title has a lot of say in who he fights too.
Don't forget to take a second to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on all of the latest fight news. Henry Cejudo offered to train Jorge Masvidal for the Colby Covington fight. We're only days away from Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal squaring off in the octagon. The whole narrative around this fight is about how these two were once good friends who have turned into enemies, with a lot of smack talk in the media and a ton of bad blood between the two. While many are focusing on the storyline going into this fight, others are taking note of what each brings to the table in terms of their fight game and acumen. Masvidal is a highly experienced fighter who has been in every level of the game, from the street to the bright lights of Madison Square Garden. He's a nasty stand-up artist with some of the best boxing in the fight game and has well-timed kicks that could wear out any fighter. Meanwhile, Colby is a wrestler first and is able to sustain a level of intensity that few could match in the octagon. One man who sees Masvidal having a hard time in this fight is the former champ himself, Henry Cejudo. Triple C knows a thing or two about wrestling, and in his eyes, he feels it's more of a matchup that will favor Colby. Case in point, this is what he said in a recent episode of the Triple C and Schmo show on YouTube.
Stylistically, Schmo, that fight kind of scares me for George, and I'm going for George. And if he has the right game plan, if he find the right engineers and the right tricks and traits, I had even asked a buddy of mine to be like, hey man, if George needs help, man, I'd be more willing to help him, because I know that he cannot create positions with Colby Covington, because the more he creates wrestling positions with Colby, the more he's going to be in Colby's game. So
ever since he stepped away from the cage, Cejudo has been coaching other elite fighters, including UFC flyweight champion Deiveson Figueiredo, former light heavyweight champion John Jones, the featherweight title challenger Korean Zombie, and others. But Masvidal has confirmed that he's been working with world-class wrestler Bo Nickel at American Top Team for this matchup. Still, what do you think about Cejudo offering his services to coach Masvidal ahead of the Colby fight? And who do you think will win this highly anticipated main event come Saturday night?
Fast forward to just 2 weeks from now, I think it is, or 3 weeks, with Alexander Volkov. His team is saying that he might not be allowed to fight because they've actually put a restriction in place. Have you heard from his team?
Yeah, we're actually trying to get him into England sooner so that he can be there and be ready to fight.
Oh, so there's like a date that's coming into play.
There's what?
There's like a date where that's going to be effective, so he could get in sooner, kind of thing?
Oh, I have no idea. Listen, when things like this start blowing up, we start looking at potential problems and what possibilities are, and we try to get around it. We try to figure out how to, well, if that's going to happen, let's get these guys into England earlier. And I know that we've been trying to get Volkov to leave Russia, and he hasn't wanted to.
Okay, so it's on his end at the moment. Like, basically the balls are in the air, but he could leave sooner and save that
100%.
Rafael Fiziev is out of RDA fight. Islam Makhachev offers to step in, and Dana White issues a statement. COVID-19 didn't care how big of a fight the Battle of the Rafas was going to be for us fans, and took it away from us. The highly anticipated fight between up-and-coming lightweight contender Rafael Fiziev and former champion Rafael dos Anjos was scheduled to take place at UFC 272 this weekend on March 5th. Now, Fiziev has had to pull out of the fight due to testing positive for COVID-19 just days before the bout. Fiziev was ranked number 11 in the lightweight ranking, while dos Anjos is number 6, and would have been an incredible clash. UFC President Dana White, in a recent interview with TMZ, says that no matter what, they're working on making sure that dos Anjos remains on the card. This is what he said in that interview.
No, we're working on getting him a new opponent. We'll keep that fight, and we'll get him something.
One man who is raising his hand to step in for Fiziev is Islam Makhachev, fresh off his recent beatdown of Bobby Green just this past Saturday. Makhachev, who is now the number 1 contender for the lightweight title, tweeted this in reference to this Saturday's fight. 170? Let's do it. We have unfinished business, RDA. And dos Anjos responded to Makhachev pretty quickly, saying this: 170 pounds, I'm in. Let's go. Don't run. These two men have been paired against each other twice, and both times it fell through. They were supposed to meet the first time at UFC 254, but dos Anjos had to pull out of that fight for testing positive for COVID-19. Then, it was rescheduled to take place a month later, in November 2020, but Makhachev had to withdraw due to a staph infection. The fact that this fight would take place in 170 pounds is great for Makhachev, as he would not be risking his number 1 contender spot for the lightweight belt. And perhaps he's been indulging in some celebratory tiramisu with Khabib after the Bobby Green fight, so there's always that. But what do you think about the possibility of having Makhachev replace Fiziev for the RDA fight? And who do you think would win this fight at 170 pounds if it does take place? Strickland praises Paige VanZant while smack-talking her husband. Gegard Mousasi is a killer, and that's no joke. He successfully defended his Bellator middleweight title last weekend against Austin Vanderford at Bellator 275 in impressive fashion, winning by TKO in the first round against the previously undefeated American. While Mousasi cemented his claim as one of the best fighters on the planet, there was another man, Sean Strickland of the UFC, who used this as an opportunity to praise Vanderford's wife, former UFC strawweight Paige VanZant. Why? Well, because in the days that followed Vanderford's loss, Paige went out and got a tattoo of her husband's initials and posted it on social media. Strickland reposted this photo with a caption that read, "Paige VanZant paying the bills after Mousasi napped her wife, LMAO. I love a strong woman becoming the head of the household. I need me one of these, LOL. Do I cut my off now or later?" Then, getting a bit more serious, Strickland lauded Mousasi and took a swipe at anyone who would have thought that he was in danger in this fight. If you guys didn't think Mousasi was going to beat Paige VanZant's wife, you don't know much about MMA. Sometimes people go to Bellator and we forget how savage these people were in the UFC. Mousasi was a top contender in the UFC before he left the organization in 2017 and has dominated Bellator ever since, save for one fight against Rafael Lovato Jr. He's now in his second stint as Bellator middleweight champion. But what are your thoughts on Strickland's comments here? Today's video was jam-packed with some juicy stories from the fight world. What are your thoughts about what's going on in MMA? Don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel to see more videos just like this. See you next time.